Look at this picture. 10 minutes before it was taken, someone in this photo had stolen all the money from the cafe on the beach. However, all these people claim that none of them visited the cafe in the last 10 minutes. Who is the thief? The thief is the man with ice cream. If he had bought it more than 10 minutes ago, it would have already melted, or the man would have already eaten it. Mark and James played in the attic where it was dark and dirty. But when they came down, only Mark's face was covered with dust. James's face was miraculously clean. However, it was James who went and washed his face. Why? James looked at Mark's face and thought that he was dirty too. At the same time, when Mark looked at James, whose face was spotless, he decided he was just as clean. To crack this riddle, you need to be very attentive. Okay, consider yourself warned. An elderly lady called the police. A detective picked up the call. The woman reported that her neighbor, a young woman called Gina, seemed to have disappeared. The woman hadn't seen her for a few days and got worried. When the police arrived at Gina's house, they managed to unlock the door and found Gina inside, tied to a chair, with her mouth covered with a scarf. When she could talk again, she told the police that 3 days ago, a robber had broken into her house, tied her, and taken all her money and gadgets. The police officers didn't believe Gina. Why? Look at the date on the calendar. Over there on the wall. See? It's the same date as the one on the calendar at the police station. But if Gina was tied all this time, who was changing the dates on her calendar? You got lost in a forest. It's getting dark, and very soon, wild animals will start their hunt. There are 4 roads you can choose from: the north, south, west, and east. But the north path will take you to a supermassive black hole that will swallow you up. The south road goes through a lake full of huge whale sharks. If you take the west road, you'll end up at the edge of a ginormous hole in the ground that can't be crossed. And the east path will bring you to a sky-high mountain that is impossible to climb over. Which road should you take? You need to follow the south road. Whale sharks present no threat to people. They will let you swim across the lake without any problems. Lauren cooked 10 buckets of chicken wings for a family gathering, 1 for each guest. But later, it turned out a little Jimmy was left without his portion. Someone took 2 buckets. Was it Uncle Patrick? He seems suspicious. Or maybe Lauren's son, Justin. He's wearing this creepy know-it-all smile. Or could little Jimmy himself hide his chicken wings in his bag with toys to get another portion? Look at the dog. It wouldn't leave Uncle Patrick's side. It can smell the meat the man has hidden. One night, you find yourself stuck in an old spooky castle. You hear someone chasing after you, and you run faster and faster. But suddenly, a dead end. However, a bit later, you notice 3 doors on the wall. But behind each door, there are some horrifying creatures. The first door hides zombies. Werewolves are behind the second door, and if you open the third door, you'll come face to face with bloodthirsty vampires. Which door should you open to have a chance to survive? Escape through the second door. The moon is waxing at the moment, and werewolves transform only on a full moon. Look at these students. Who's cheating? It's the guy in the front row. He's balancing an open book on his foot. It's the year 2158. Jim is repairing the roof of his garage. At one point, he slips, falls to the ground, and breaks his leg. But the next day, Jim is already walking in the park, looking perfectly fine. How is it possible? Jim is a robot. See that red light blinking over his left ear? They must have repaired him really fast. Another robot committed a crime. Unfortunately, the police were unable to catch the culprit immediately. But they suspended 3 people, and each of them could be the criminal. A police officer had to figure out the true identities of these people. He had a knife, a screwdriver, a bottle of water, and a pen. Which object should he use to reach his goal? He can make the suspects drink from the bottle. The robot will either refuse or short-circuit. Now look at these guys. Who do you think is a real superhero? It's not Joker. His hands aren't as white as the rest of his body. And it's not Batman. His mask has no ears. But Superman is real. Mrs. Lawrence went missing on Friday. Her husband informed the police, and they started an investigation. The last person to see the woman was a shop assistant in a jewelry store. She confirmed that the woman, who had been wearing a red dress and red shoes, had bought a necklace that day. On Saturday, Mrs. Lawrence called the police herself. She whispered,
"I'm locked in some house. I managed to find a cell phone, but I may be discovered at any... Ah!"
The police officer managed to track the call, but he could only figure out the street. Look at the houses on this street and try to understand where Mrs. Lawrence is kept. She must be kept in this house. Look, there's a tiny piece of red fabric on the fence over there. And we know that Mrs. Lawrence was wearing a red dress. You see a boat filled with people, but at the same time, there isn't a single person on board. How is it possible? All the people on the boat are married. 4 witches met up for their annual coven. The head witch looked at the rest of the group and exclaimed,
According to the laws of our community, we can't live among people or communicate with them. And still, one of you has broken this rule.
Look at the witches and find out who it is. It's the witch in a purple hat. There's a smartphone in her pocket. 3 friends, Kathy, Mark, and Lauren, gathered together to catch up on their latest news at Lauren's place. At one point, they decided to play hide and seek. When it was Lauren's turn to look for her friends, she easily found Mark. But even with his help, she couldn't spot Kathy. Can you help Lauren find her friend? Look, she's hiding in a trash can. Ew! Huh. To crack this one, you might need to think outside the box again. A man is pushing a car along the road. Then he arrives at a hotel. He shouts, "I'm bankrupt!" Why? The man is playing Monopoly. And now, let's have some fun. I've got very unusual riddles for you with non-standard answers. An electric train is moving at a speed of 100 miles per hour in the northern direction, and the wind is blowing at a speed of 8 miles per hour in the western direction. Which way will the smoke go? Oh, come on. Electric trains don't produce smoke. Great. The next one for you. How many times can you subtract 10 from 50? Just once. After that, you'll be subtracting 10 from 40. How can you make number 1 disappear? You just add the letter G at the beginning, and it's gone. What can you easily hold without touching it? A conversation, if you're sociable enough, that is. My life is hard. Every night I'm told what to do, and every morning I do exactly what I was told to do. And still, I get scolded every time. What am I? I'm an alarm clock.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Are you ready for a new detective journey? Then buckle your seatbelts and let's go. Mary was walking through the park when she spotted a hungry kitten. The woman decided to share her snack with the animal. Unfortunately, there was a stream between her and the kitty. She squatted down to attract the cat's attention and showed it the food. The animal was next to her in no time. There was no bridge over the stream, and still, the cat wasn't wet. How is it possible? It happened in the winter and the stream was frozen. In a lake, there is a patch of lily pads. Every day, the patch doubles in size. If it takes 48 days for the patch to cover the entire lake, how long will it take for the patch to cover half the lake? The patch doubles in size every day. So on the 47th day, the patch will be half the size it is on the 48th day. You are in a place called Bobby's World, and there is only one law there. There is a mirror, but no reflection. There is pizza with cheese, but not with ham. There is pepper, but no salt. There is a door, yet no entrance or exit. What is the law in this strange world? Everything in Bobby's World must contain double letters in its name. Kenneth was hungry.
Oh my God!
He found a nice diner that served burgers and bought one. After a waiter brought him his order, Kenneth went to the bathroom to wash his hands. But when he came back, his burger was gone. The guy looked around the diner and understood who had taken his lunch. Can you figure it out? It's the young woman with a dog sitting at her feet and sniffing the air. If she was just drinking coffee, which is what she's pretending to do, the dog wouldn't be so interested in her. Look at these two guys. One is big and burly, and the other is short and thin. They're in a cafe, drinking identical drinks. The shorter one gulps his drink down in one go and leaves. The other man sips his drink slowly. Then he falls to the floor and is taken to a hospital. Can you explain why it happened if they had the same drinks? The drinks contained poisoned ice cubes. The man who enjoyed his drink gave these ice cubes time to melt and release the poison, while the other man didn't. An Arab sheikh told his two sons that they had to race their camels to a distant city to see who would inherit his fortune. The one whose camel arrived last would win. After wandering aimlessly for days, the brothers asked a wise man for advice. After listening to his opinion, they jumped on the camels and raced as fast as they could to their destination. What did the man tell them? The wise man told them to switch their camels. Look at these two guys. They're wearing similar clothes, both holding coffee cups, and in general, seem to be perfectly okay. But one of them is a werewolf in disguise. Which one? Look at the guy on the right. There are strange marks on the rim of his cup. Were they left by his fangs? Also, his pupils are a bit elongated.
Oh.
And there is a paw print design on the plastic bag he's holding. Is it a special store for werewolves? A rich entrepreneur disappeared from his office. The only thing he left behind was a note with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, and 11 and a calendar. The police have 5 suspects. All of them the businessman's acquaintances. James, Kevin, Carol, Jason, and Laura. Who knows something about the man's disappearance? Jason. The numbers mean months of the year, and the first letters of these months make up his name, Jason. A furious traveler at the airport claimed the contents of his baggage had disappeared. When I got my suitcase, it was empty. I want you to compensate for what I've lost. After checking the passenger's info, airport security found out that he had indeed left London with a heavy suitcase, and now his bag was empty and a bit wet. The whole situation was suspicious. Can you figure out what happened? The passenger left London with a suitcase full of ice. During the flight, the ice melted, and the man demanded compensation for the lost belongings. Matthew bought a new smartphone and a phone case. He paid $510. The gadget cost $500 more than the case. How much did Matthew pay for the phone? He paid $505. Last night, on a full moon, several people disappeared in the city. Locals believe that the kidnapper was a werewolf, and you are invited to investigate this case. There are 3 suspects, Jack, Levi, and Luke, but all of them have alibis. Jack was walking with his girlfriend near the river. Levi was choosing a silver ring for himself in the mall. And Luke, who is a museum guard, had a night shift at work. Which guy is guilty? Jack was walking under a full moon and didn't turn into a werewolf. Levi wasn't afraid to put on silver rings. The werewolf and potential kidnapper is Luke. Detective Black's assistant, Josh, was late for work. When he arrived, he told his boss the following story. I was driving along the highway when I saw an unconscious man lying on the left side of the road. I picked him up and took him to the nearest hospital. Finally, he came to his senses. He told me he had been pushed out of a moving vehicle, but the bag with all his money and documents was left inside. Strangely, Detective Black told Josh that the man had lied to him. How did he figure it out? If the man had indeed been pushed out of the car, he would have been lying on the right side of the road, not the left one. Criminals caught 3 men and locked them in a basement with only one window, high above the floor. Oh, no. The men decided that at least one of them needed to escape and warn the police. The men stood on each other's shoulders, but the one on the top still couldn't reach the window. But then they did something, and one of them managed to escape. Can you figure out what they did? The tallest of them climbed on the top, and since, proportionally, this man also had longer arms, he managed to reach the window. You find yourself in a room with no windows. There are 3 doors leading out of the room. Suddenly, a big screen on the wall lights up. You read, "Behind each of these doors there is some danger. The first door leads to a scorching hot desert, several steps, and the sun will burn you. Behind the second door, there is a hungry alligator that hasn't eaten for a year. And the third door hides a pool with icy water. To get to freedom, you'll have to swim across it. Which door should you choose to survive?" Alligators can indeed go without food for up to 3 years, which means that the creature behind the second door is hungry and dangerous. Freezing water can cause cold shock in an unprepared swimmer. That's why you should choose the first door. You just need to wait for the sun to go down and walk through the desert.
Oh, yes.
James came to a cafe to drink coffee, but when a waitress brought him a cup, the man found a fly in his drink. He called the waitress and told her to bring him another coffee. She did, but when James took a sip from his cup, he got really angry and asked to call a manager. He complained that the waitress had brought him the same coffee. How did he understand it? The new coffee was already sweet because James had already put sugar in his first cup before finding the fly.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.